Hi, welcome to another Trailblazer podcast. Today with me, I have Kayla Vander Molen. I hope I pronounced that right. She is with the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, and she's from Calgary, Alberta. So welcome, Kayla. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jill, so much for having me on Trailblazers today. It's an absolute privilege to get to speak with you and to speak on this platform.
I can't wait to share your story. So let's dig right in. How did you get started in the trades?
Honestly, it didn't start with the trades. I did not come from a blue-collar family. I don't have a blue-collar background, and I didn't come from a blue-collar community. So when I graduated high school, I was living in Ottawa, Ontario, and I knew that I loved working with my hands. I loved reading patterns and blueprints and constructing things from scratch, from the beginning to the end. And so I went to school for fashion design, and I loved making garments. But I noticed very quickly that the environment did not suit my personality. As you know, different environments have different cliques or different personalities in it. So I knew that I wanted to take a different path, but I wasn't really sure exactly what direction to take. So I went to an open house night at a local college, and lo and behold, thankfully they had a bunch of trade booths all set up. So I was looking at carpentry, I was looking at electrical, and all of a sudden some metal art caught my eye. And there was a welding booth with the most elaborate, beautiful blacksmith work there. So I went right on over because art's always been my cup of tea. And I started observing what was on the table. And the instructor noticed my interest and started chatting with me. And he said, "Hey, I think you might be interested in trying out welding, hearing your prerequisites." So I signed up for night class. And my first time striking a stick or striking an arc, I fell in love with it. I said, okay, this is for me. But I'm really glad that I still took that night course because it gave me a good understanding of, is this the industry I want to get into? Is it worth pursuing? And sure enough, it was. So after I completed that night course, I signed up for the first, for a position to get into that course full time. And yeah, I took a 10-month welding course and started welding right away.
That's awesome. That is so, so cool. You know, and I love the smell of 6010. I even wrote a poem about welding. That's a whole side story. But yeah, if I can smell burning 6010 from like miles away, I love that smell. It's like apple pie to me. It's like I want to eat it up. Well, it's like campfire, right? It is. I mean, we both know that it's cellulose coating, so it is actually a lot like campfire.
My grandmother, she lives in a town with a pulp mill. So every time I smell 6010, I think of my grandmother, and it just kind of gives me a sense of home.
Oh, I love that even more than my story. Geez, I do love that. That is so sweet.
What's your story?
With the 6010?
Yeah.
Or yeah, I've always loved it. And I think it comes from being, I think it's in my blood. I think it's because my grandpa, I remember the smell in my grandpa's shop. And then when my dad was welding when I was little, I remember that. And when I first tried welding, I tried welding with my dad, and it was 6010 that he taught me. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. And then he said, well, try and write your name. So I wrote my name, and he said, most people can't write their name. And I was like, that's not hard. I can even write my name with a weld rod now with my left hand too. But, you know, but that's part of being in the trade. You have to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can do this, right? So, but yeah, no, I love 6010. I always have.
That's good. That's such a nice story.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, you know the love of welding, right? It's always nice to talk to another welder. I mean, I interview a lot of trades women, but to have another welder, that's like we can relate so much, so much, right?
Well, with welding, it's a whole new language in itself too. And it's a great way because we're always interested to share our tips and tricks with another welder and to learn. Doesn't matter if you've been into the industry for 24, 25 years or 10 years or 2 days. There's something to learn no matter what level you're at.
Absolutely. And the machines and stuff, technology's ever changing too. Like, as you know, you're a welding instructor, which I want to get into later, but as a welding instructor, you know, we get these new machines and it's like, oh, what does that button do? What does that do? And then there's new gases that come out for like MIG and TIG and stuff like that. I'm not a TIG welder, but with MIGs and stuff, you know, way back when I took school a long time ago, I remember inert gas. Now we have like reactive gas. Maybe I blocked that out. Maybe my brain was full. I don't remember learning about reactive gases way back when. But yeah, it's always evolving, ever changing, ever improving, right? And then there's the exotics, right? Like stainless steel and chrome moly and all that other stuff, right? So
Oh yeah.
it's never boring, for sure. Never boring at all. So now my next question for you: how far have you explored your trade?
Um, I think I have a pretty good, well-rounded experience with welding. Obviously, there's always so much more to learn. Now, when I initially started my welding career in Ottawa, I worked in construction yards and I worked at a truck repair shop, and that was a lot of fun. When I moved to Alberta, I worked at a machine shop. I've had a chance to work in the coal-fired power plant industry, so the energy sector. I've worked in oil and gas and refinery industries as well. And then I had the great opportunity of working out at the shipyards in Vancouver Island. So having that diversity, I got to work on different alloys, different steel with different processes. When I was working at the machine shop, I got one great opportunity. I had to weld on a stainless case around industrial magnets. And you know how the arc is when you're working around magnets. So that's when I had to learn how to become an ambidextrous welder real quick, because everything had to be TIG welded, because it was very, very fine and everything had to be precise. But that's when I also found out to wrap your welding cables around the magnet to kind of demagnetize it for a short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's always something to learn. I had a lot of fun. I'm still having fun, even though my primary role is no longer just welding. But I'm learning things from my students that come in and from our members on a weekly basis. So it's always fun and exciting.
Yeah, because now you're an instructor, right? And we'll get into that more now, but you've come a long way. I mean, not just Ottawa to Alberta, but you've done a lot of things. And shipyards, how exciting that is.
It was really cool to be a part of that. Canada is getting back into the shipbuilding business. So I got to work on science vessels, ships from New Zealand. We were either fabricating parts to replace them, or we were completely removing some old wells from the shell of the ship and reconstructing that to code to make sure that essentially the ship didn't sink once it went into the ocean. And that's also when you have to consider more about the metallurgy side of things, because now that steel is in the ocean or the Atlantic or the Pacific, you know, that's a lot of salt water. So then you have to think about the corrosion and just how cold the water can get. So everything together, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, that is really, really, really cool. Do you have to be a B pressure welder to work on the ships or no? Or is it a special ticket or anything?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't remember. I did need my CWB flux core and my CWB 6 tickets, all 4 position for each. I would assume you would need to be a B welder, just because it's not just structural, but there is still a substantial amount of pressure on around the ship's vessel, right?
Right. That's interesting. Now I want to go and be a shipbuilder.
Or even work on the subs.
Let's go. Let's go. You and I will pack up. We'll go there for the summer. It's way too hot here right now, but it's, mind you, I think it's hotter there right now. But anyways, so what is your favorite aspect of your trade of choice? Wow, welding.
Honestly, that's a hard one to choose. There's so much that I love about welding. The fact that there's always something new to learn. I'm a big fan of TIG welding. It's like you're painting with steel, and all the beautiful colors that come out of that, but always trying to achieve a salmon pink. So you know that your heat input is perfect. I would have to say, as well as the community that you're working with, working out with the ladies and the gentlemen out there, you meet such a diverse group of individuals from all different paths of life, and you're always able to pick up different tips and tricks. I worked with a couple of gentlemen that were from China, and what they got to weld on was were alloys that I've never even heard of, or some of their tricks that they were teaching me. I've never seen that anywhere where I worked before, and it was very, very unique. So things like that, I appreciate that you can't really anticipate exactly what you're going to be doing that day, even though you're still going to get a rubric, but things are always going to pop up and there's always challenges to overcome. So I think I just encompassed the entire trade itself. So I love the whole industry.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It's really never a dull moment, is it? It's like, you might be doing, say, piecework or something, but every day is so different, right? It's different people, different scenario. You might get pulled off that and go and do this and stuff. Now, I did love TIG. I didn't stick with it because I got in a car accident, messed up my neck, and that's a long story. I didn't get back into it when I went back to work. I got back into stick and never went with TIG, but it's so beautiful. It is such a beautiful process. It really is. And that's, I think TIG is where you find all the exotics, right? Usually if it's going to be an exotic metal, it's going to be TIG welded. Like in my experience, all the chrome mollies on plant sites and chrome and stainless and all of that you find on the plant sites, that's all TIG welded, right? And you got to be good. You can't mess that stuff up or you're, see ya. Yep. You're gone.
You have to keep your skill set up to date because it's not just like riding a bike. You have to stay consistent with it for sure. Yeah. But TIG is just such a clean process. And yeah, it does take longer, but it also allows you to pay attention to detail while you're doing it to eliminate the possibilities of QC coming by and making you have those repairs.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I could talk about that for hours and hours, but we'll move on to the next question.
Oh, for sure.
So what obstacles have you overcome along the way?
You know what? There's a couple of answers to that one too, as I'm sure most people that are in this industry have come across several obstacles. One of my obstacles was when I completed my first time going to school for welding over in Ottawa, trying to find work. I remember I walked into a couple of potential employment opportunities, and before I could even say hello, I would get laughed at. And like I was dressed appropriately for the job. I had my Carhartts, I had my steel toes, I had a shirt covering my arms. I was ready to work. But they didn't want anything to do with me. There's a couple of other places. I've heard this about 4 times that the employer told me there's not a woman's washroom on site or in the building. I said, yeah, that's not a problem. But they were pretty persistent with that. So, I was picking up what they were putting down. So after that, I realized I needed to change my approach. So then the next employer that I went up to apply for, their excuse was, hey, we're looking for someone who has 3+ years of experience. I said, you know what, that's excellent. That's not a problem. Let me volunteer for you. Give me 1 day. It's free labor for you. And at the end of the day, you can let me know if you still want to find someone who has 3 years of experience or if you're happy with the work that I'm producing. By lunchtime, the boss came around and said, when can you start? So that was my first foot in the door.
Perfect.
The pay was $11 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was an opportunity. So I like to be an optimist in that way. And that's what I kept telling myself. This is an opportunity. I'm still new. I have to learn the trade. And also I had to learn the culture as well, because learning how to strike an arc is one thing, but understanding the workplace culture is a whole different ballgame in itself. So that was my first hurdle. After that, it was coming to Alberta. I was not aware that this industry was not standardized between provinces. So because I already had my welding and fabrication certification, plus I had my CWB tickets, came out to Alberta, ready to start welding. And then I discovered that you are unable to weld in the province of Alberta unless you are an indentured apprentice or a journeyman. So that was a learning curve for sure. So I had to start from square one again. I did not have a mentor at the time. So I didn't have anyone that said, hey, challenge first year, challenge second year, get in, just go to your third year. Yeah. So I thought I had to start from square one again, which I did. But in retrospect, it actually helped propel my career forward. And I noticed that how they teach welding in Alberta is actually pretty different than how they teach it in Ontario. So I was able to come to the class already with a good amount of tools, so to say, in my toolbox, and then I just got to add to it while I was taking my technical training. Yeah, so that would be another big obstacle for me. And my third and final one would be lack of mentorship. I didn't realize the value of what that held until I was able to look back on my career path and all the barriers that I was stuck behind, all the obstacles that I was confronted with. Because if you don't have a mentor, in some respect, it's kind of like you're chasing your tail over and over and over again, and you don't know what path to go down. And when I joined the Boilermakers, I gained that mentorship, and I met a couple of outstanding individuals that took me under their wing, showed me the ropes, not only taught me the trade, but taught me the avenues you could go down and how to go about it, how to study for it. And that has helped propel my career in so many different ways. And it provides a level of comfort as well, because you can always go to someone, call them and say, hey, I have this question. Can you help me out with this? And that there is profound. Yeah. So from that experience of having a lack of mentorship, that is what my purpose now is in my career, to be the mentor to someone else that I didn't have for myself.
That's awesome. That's really good. We do need really good caring mentors, because there are a lot of people that try to mentor or help you out, and it's just they don't have the personality for it sometimes. And I think being a female mentor too is helpful for females that are coming up in the industry that are a little bit shy about asking, your male allies, or maybe if you're working with somebody that's grumpy, which could be male or female. Mm-hmm. I've had both. Yeah. It's really important to have somebody that's a lot like you when you're coming up in the trade that can help you, right? They can relate to you a little bit more. And it's really funny. And I know even working non-union, you do have brothers in the trade, but when you become union, you have these dedicated brothers that, like, I don't have any brothers of my own. I have 2 older sisters and not a lot of boys in my family at all. Now I have a son though. It's really nice to have like hundreds, if not thousands of brothers. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And yes, we do have some good camaraderie. We do pick on each other sometimes, maybe not as much as a real brother would, thankfully. I have scars from my sisters, so I can't imagine what a real brother would do. But I almost lost my eye to one sister. I'm sure if she's she'll be like, stop telling people that. Yeah, she kicked a rock in my eye. Anyways.
Oh no.
Like 3. Anyways, yeah, no, I love the camaraderie of the real brothers, but yeah, they are like brothers. And I think when we are younger and we're apprentices, it's more like father figures.
Yeah.
At first, but it does turn into brotherhood. And maybe I feel honestly, me as a mentor, I feel more like a mom now, when I'm teaching. Like, I know you teach too. So yeah, for me, it's like, oh man, and I bring snacks to class and stuff now. It's crazy, but I'm more the mom mentor. But that's, that's really, really, really important. And that kind of leads me into, well, I have lots of questions for you yet, but I do want to talk to you about being a female instructor, because I really think that that is really, really important, not only for women to see a woman instructor, because it's inspiring, it's incredibly inspiring, but it also teaches male students to get used to seeing women in industry, and
Yep.
to automatically acknowledge, that there is no difference in the knowledge and the hand skill. I mean, it varies from person to person to person. Especially, trades don't have genders. Some people, think that women are better welders. Well, I mean, that can be argued. I've met a lot of men that are really, really good welders. They're just hard on
Hmm.
themselves, and they're perfectionists, right? So to me, I think gender wise, I think it's a woman to see another woman as an instructor. And like, how do you feel about that? Because I know it's definitely made a difference when I'm acting as an instructor.
And I find it does as well. I actually had a female student of mine that came up to me. She first came through my course when she was right out of high school. And she came to me as a second year and she said, you know what, Kayla, I wanted to say, if you didn't come to my school and do a presentation, I probably wouldn't have started my career in welding. I had to see another female in that role. And my eyes watered up, that's for sure. Because that that is so inspirational to hear her say that. So in some sense, we're inspiring each other all the time. I believe it's incredibly valuable to have a female in this role, yes, but to have somebody who has a good understanding of the industry too. Um, but yeah, any of the students that come through, they're already getting a sense, as you've mentioned, that there's going to be female out there. There's going to be female who are going to be your foreman, maybe your superintendent, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And why I even say it in that way is I went to some job sites. I sat down at the lunch table, and you could see the look on some of the guys like, uh-oh, there's a female here. How do I act? But by the end of the job, we were all good pals. But it's that initial intimidation sometimes because people are so used to, or they have some kind of idea of what the trades is going to be. And sometimes it's very different than how the trades actually are. And in most respects, the trades are very inclusive. But I'm also pretty biased in that factor because I'm unionized. In my environment, the trades are very inclusive. Um, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
have to say to
Well,
that in a nutshell.
yeah, no, and that brings up another point too that does come up in the podcast from time to time. And when we publicly speak, because that's how we actually met. We knew of each other before, but we actually met during a public speaking event that was over Zoom. But
Yeah.
anyway, we haven't actually met in person. But I think it's really important to explain too that when you are a union, when you spoke earlier about the having issues getting a job, union really, really eliminates that, because
Hmm.
when there's a job available, if you have the skills that are needed for that specific job, they go down the list. And if you're qualified and you're available to work, then you go. They don't care if you're purple or 6'2" or 5'4", or they don't care. You have the skill and you go. So there, it completely eliminates the discrimination in the hiring process. And I really like that, right?
And that's something that I find so valuable about being a union member is knowing that unions are one of the main causes for gender and racial integration into this kind of workforce. Well, not just the trades, but many workforces.
Yeah.
And that there is very valuable. So I understand that a lot of women experience a large pay gap in many industries compared to their male counterparts. But when you're unionized, you get paid at the same pay scale as your brother or as your sister. Um, so for my union in particular, if you're a first year welder, it doesn't matter if you're male, female, or trans, you're all getting paid the exact same. Same with the second year, third year journeyman, foreman. And that there speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, union does have a lot of benefits. And as far as employment opportunities go too, you can become a business agent, business manager, as well as all the other things, you know, that you might not think of when you join the trades. Like I never thought of becoming a foreman. I've never been a foreman, but you could, you know, or a
Mhm.
general foreman or supervision, right? And now you can add, if you're union, you can add business agent, business manager. And I am the first female officer to ever sit on at my local, right? I'm the first female ever at UA Local 496. So, and I'm on the executive board now, first female ever. I'm so excited, right? It's really an honor. But yeah, I mean, there's so many other things that you can do, right? It just joining the trades is, you know, people think it's just a job. It's a career.
Yeah.
It's just a career. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day who said, you know, in my 20s I did this, in my 30s I did this, and in my 40s I did this, and then, you know, when I go into my 50s I want to do this. And I thought, you know what, I don't know anything really. I mean, I was a waitress for a while when I was 18. You know, I did some odd things, you know, odd jobs, cleaning houses and chambermaid and stuff like that. But once I hit like 24, that was it. That was it. I was in the trades and that's all that I know. I mean, I was an
Yeah.
instructor, but it was always around welding, and I don't ever want to change that. I always want to be somehow in a position that relates to trades. It opens a lot of doors.
Well,
So,
even if that is to inspire other people to come into the trades, like how you and I met, we did a Zoom presentation for a group of women entering the trades. And to be able to speak to that group and for those ladies to see other women in positions where they had a successful career in welding, that right there is very eye-opening, right?
yeah.
Um, and any woman that I speak with in any of these events, I give them my personal number and I say, hey, if you have any questions or concerns or just need to rant, here's my number, call me. And that I'm passionate about, because it's important to have that connection and to know that there's always that person that you can reach out to.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me to my next question for you is, did you have other women to look up to for support when you were coming up in your career, in your trade?
So I never worked with another woman in the industry until I became a Boilermaker. And when I did, there were few and far between. Last couple of years, I've been seeing a lot more women coming in, which is really exciting. But unfortunately, no, I did not have a female that I could call up, that I could just discuss things with. I now see that there's the Alberta Women in Trades Facebook chat group, and there's also one for North America, Women in Trades chat group, I think it's called. But these chat groups are so helpful to anyone coming in. What I did have, though, I knew of women that were very successful in their industry, and I looked up to them and I thought, hey, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to aspire to be. So I had that, but I really wish that I had someone I could just call up and kind of rant to, or say, hey, you know what, nobody wants to hire me because there's only a men's washroom. Um, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, can only do so much. I am very proud to say, though, I did have some great guys that I had the opportunity to go to and relate to some extent. But yeah, thankfully there's more women coming into the industry now for the future generation to have that kind of outreach that is required and necessary.
Exactly. And that is the more and more the push. And definitely you've already said it. That's one of the biggest reasons I think that you put yourself out there, because you didn't
Mhm.
have it. Right. And I put myself out there a lot now. And my story for putting myself out there was a little bit different. I, you know, especially being a single mom for the past 17 years, I just wanted to go to work because I had too many hats on. I wanted to go to work, come home, put my mom hat back on, and then, you know, I still have my parents, and, you know, I used to date. I don't anymore. Total different story. That needs to involve wine if you ever want to go down that path with me. I'm quite happy on my own now. But anyways, you know, and I got pulled into becoming a mentor. I was always like, you know, oh, I don't want to have, you know, I don't want to speak at these events. I'm too busy. And then as the older my kid got, I was like, yeah, sure. all come. So that's kind of why I ended up being an instructor again when I moved up
Mhm.
to the Calgary region. I used to teach, and I don't know if you Google me, you might find this, but I taught 15 years ago, and I taught a course called Creative Ironwork. So had you been in my city, you probably would have taken my course, but I was in Medicine Hat. So, but yeah, I taught for several years creative ironwork. It was welding for artists and then creative ironwork. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
that was fun. It was fun.
I really look forward to seeing your work. I'll write that down.
Well, and I used to have a business called Twisted Steel as well. So I used to do custom built stuff. I didn't do railings, well, unless they were for a friend. But yeah, I did a lot of all kinds of. I made a gong. I made bar stools for a bar. It was, yeah, I've done a lot of fun stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah, lots. I mean, see, the industry is so, especially welding, because you and I can both just relate to the welding. There's so much more you can do than just like go and manufacture parts or weld pipe. You know,
Oh,
there's just
so
so much
so
more
many
you can do.
things.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And like, I'm sure you and I can go on and on for hours.
Do you find that art is one of the main factors that brought you into the welding industry?
No, I wouldn't say art was my thing. I want to see a finished product. My brain, I'm a hands-on person. My mom even told me long before I can even remember, I got a doll stroller when I was very little for my dolls, and I insisted that I put it together, even way back when. So like that's how my brain works. I have to create and see the finished product, be proud of myself. I don't care about the pat on the back anybody else gives me. I'm happy, I'm proud, I can walk away. And with welding, melting metal together, I mean, it can't get any cooler, but hotter actually than that, right? It's just like, oh my God, I just melted metal. How cool is that, right?
Yeah.
So it was just a perfect match for me. And I honestly didn't care if it was pipe or, you know, in a building, or if it was a vessel I was building, or if I was repairing something or making, I mean, I did like to make things. I've made gates and I've made things like that. But to me, functional, not necessarily art for the wall, but functional. That was
Mhm.
kind of where my brain, I'm satisfied doing. But I don't mind teaching, right? And most of my students, when I was teaching the art course, most of them were farm women, farm wives that had the equipment and didn't know how to use it. So I had some teenagers. I had one guy take it like about 8 times because he just liked the course and liked hanging out with everybody. It was fun. Anyways. So what does a day in the life of Kayla look like?
Nowadays or when I was a welder full
Anytime.
time?
You pick a time.
Well, presently I am the pre-apprentice instructor and weld examiner in training at the Boilermaker Hall. So it does vary from day to day. I do teach the 2-week course where I have the introduction to the industry. And during that 2-week course, in the day, I'll probably teach the theory of one aspect of the trade in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I go in depth with a hands-on practical portion. And by teaching it in that fashion, it's easier to put 2 and 2 together. Oh, okay, that's why we learned about polarity earlier, or this is why I need to have my PSI set at 5 and not 15 when working with acetylene. So it's a lot of one-on-one that I have the opportunity to have with my students, or I will be reaching out to women in trade chat groups or women in trade courses and speak with those ladies, or I'll be in the welding shop working with my coworker doing the weld examinations in order for our members to go out to work during our shutdown seasons.
Yeah,
So
that's a busy day.
you know what, it's nice because I still get my hands dirty. I'm not just sitting at a desk because I'm the kind of person that's a busybody and I like to get up and I like to do things. So it is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
going from one job to another throughout the day, yeah, it keeps you on your toes. You definitely want to go home and have a good night's rest. But it's exciting and it's fulfilling.
Well, and it's never boring. That it's fulfilling and never boring, you know, and that's what kind of keeps you coming back for more. I think a lot of people that are in the trades that are really happy to be there, that's what
Mhm.
keeps them coming back. It's like I don't know it. I mean, you have a general understanding of what tomorrow is going to be like, but it's like, hey, you could, you know, do all kinds of different things. All kinds of things could be thrown your way, and you absorb it and you take it, and it's always a learning experience too, right? So
Oh,
that's good to know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the students that come through, we all have different learning styles as well. Some of us work best visually. Some of us have to be hands-on, and some of us can read a book and fully understand things. Me personally, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to be hands-on. I have to see it. So with working with such a vast range of individuals, it kind of is teaching me too, because now I have to teach subject matter in many different ways. So each class that comes through, I'm learning something new. And yeah, you can teach welding every day, all day, but you also have to keep it fun for you. And yeah, you have to make sure that the individual fully understands all the subject matter and that they're also having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And welding is fun. I haven't met too many people that don't like welding, to be honest. I mean, if they're in the pre-apprenticeship group,
Yeah.
or in a course that they're learning the basics of, yeah, they seem to enjoy it. Not everybody can be a welder. Their heart might not be 100% in it, but yeah, it is fun. Definitely. Like I said, melting metal's pretty cool.
Oh, for sure. Well, when I was working out in the field, my day, I preferred working day shift opposed to night shift. So I'd start my shift at 6:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, wearing my big, beautiful coveralls, because one thing I like about this industry is you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. We all just wear the blue coveralls or Carhartts.
Yeah.
Some of us are a little dirty. Some of us have grease on us, as long as we're getting the job done. And so day would start nice and early. I'd work a 12-hour shift. And throughout that day, I would either start tearing up a vessel apart or an expansion joint apart. By the end of the day, it's fully cleaned and put back together. If I'm fortunate enough to do it in a day, sometimes it takes a couple of days. But I'd be working with several apprentices, several journeymen, both Boilermakers, both welders, so of different trades. And I have to say, it was very enlightening to work in that environment, because I'd be welding one moment, then have to assist a rigger with their setup, or I have to inspect some of their shackles or just their other rigging equipment. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that does sound like a lot of fun. Yeah, it takes me back. I'm kind of reminiscing in my head. It makes me want to get back on the tools. It's been a while since I was in like an actual shop. Instructing was one thing, but now I want to go back. Thanks.
What was your favorite thing when you're working in a shop?
What's that?
What was your favorite thing when you're working at the shop?
I liked fabric. Why, it's really hard to say. I liked fabrication, whether it was spooling pipe or working on vessels, because I've done that in a couple of different locations. I like that vessels are not boring, because it was always new construction that I did for vessels. I honestly don't remember ever doing a vessel repair. But I like shutdowns. Shutdowns are chaos. It's organized chaos, and you're busy meeting lots of people. You're exhausted at the end of every day, but you're ready for more the next day, and you're busy running here, running there. And that's where my heart is. I'd love to go back and be like a foreman for a shutdown, or a GF for a shutdown, but they're just too far and few right now. Right. I know CF is having a big 6-month shutdown in about a year and a half from now.
Oh, okay.
And that is, I mean, in Medicine Hat, I've done a lot of time there. My son's father works there as well. So, it's my old stomping ground. So who knows where I'll be. If maybe in a year and a half, I might go back and at least go back on the tools for it. I've got a cat that's bugging me. I think he's melting too. I don't know if you can hear that. He's like, it's too hot in here, Mom. Anyways, so next question for you. Do you have any advice for others that may be looking to join the trades?
What I would suggest for any of the women who are interested in joining the trades, take a pre-apprenticeship. There is Empower Women in Trades. There is Women Building Futures. They are throughout Alberta. If you're not from Alberta, find what pre-apprenticeship there is available around your community. One thing I really like about those courses is essentially you get your feet wet before you jump headfirst into a cold pool of water. Because yes, Jill, you and I, we love welding, but welding is not for everybody. Some people are better with HVAC, especially you'd be very fortunate this week if you had that knowledge. Or some people prefer electrical, so on and so forth. So find what suits your personality. Same for any of the gentlemen that are looking at entering a trade. Take a pre-apprenticeship course, find out what works for you. Once you do that, find someone to indenture you because you want to actually start your apprenticeship. I find that some employers dangle an apprenticeship like a carrot in front of you, but don't actually give that to the hardworking coworker employee. I would say join a union because I'm unionized, and by having that representation, by being paid well and working towards something bigger than yourself is incredibly valuable. And other things that I would suggest is get out of your comfort zone and grow, because if you're not going to get out of your comfort zone, it's going to be very hard to be successful in the industry. And I promise you, the second you step out of your comfort zone, there are going to be people there to support you because we've all been there before. Yeah.
That's good. No, that's really good. No, I like that. Yeah, that I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's perfect. Perfect. So, last questions or remarks actually are yours. If there's anything else you'd like to share about yourself or inspiring words for anybody that's thinking about getting into the trades or yeah, and the final remarks are yours.
Final remarks. I know I was thinking of so many earlier. I would have to say, get yourself a mentor, find a mentor, go on to any trade chat groups. I did mention a couple earlier, Trade Women Chat Group, Alberta Women in Trades, they are very helpful. Just make sure that you don't just chase the money. Yes, there is a lot of money to be made in the industry. But some people feel the need that they chase the money and then they realize they're not happy in their chosen trade. But as a welder, you can work in so many different areas. If new construction is not for you, try out oil and gas. If the refinery is not for you and the shutdown season is not for you, working away from home, then find a mom and pop shop in town. Maybe you'd prefer working on stainless steel appliances. And for any of the ladies in the group, one thing I would really like to emphasize on is don't be polite to people who make you uncomfortable, because there are always a couple of rotten apples in any orchard. Women are still relatively new in the trades, and the majority of the time, most people are going to be very accepting and very supportive, but you're always going to come across one or two people who aren't as supportive as the rest of the group. And I know, at least for myself, I was very passive when I first came into the industry, and I'd always try and be polite. And I found that sometimes when you give someone an inch, they go a mile. And it's nice when you just stop things right then and there if something makes you uncomfortable. And then you essentially give yourself, your future self, you're doing your future self a favor. And just let someone know if something's okay or something's not okay. That being said, I'm all fine with joking and having a good old time, especially with the brothers and sisters that I'm very close with. But as long as they know where that line is, because if something's ever directed at you, that's not okay. So that's my 2 cents there. That is something I'm a strong believer in.
That's great advice. Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, nip it in the bud if things start, right? You do have to. And I agree, when in the beginning for me, even as a waitress, way before I got into welding, yeah, those jokes, if you don't nip them in the bud, then they sometimes fester. They get worse. They bother you and they fester inside of you, and you get that anger that you just don't need to have. So people need to know where that line is, right? And that's in no matter what you do, really, for a living. But yeah, in the trades, because we're pretty much always outnumbered, it's good to let everyone know where that line is. And you know what I say a lot too, if somebody is going to get, a little distasteful in the jokes and stuff like that, I always say, would you say that to your mother, or would you say that to your sister? Because if you wouldn't, you shouldn't be saying it to me or your wife or whatever, if that's the situation, if you know that they're married. If you're not going to say it in front of them, please just don't say it in front of me. And then they kind of get it, then they're like, oh, okay, now I know where that line is, right?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
even if it's just meant in good humor, but you just don't like it and it's just tasteful for you. Yeah, absolutely. Just say, hey, you're not comfortable with that, or just confront them.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Oh yeah, it doesn't have to be awkward. You don't have to run to the boss or anything like that. That is all you usually have to do, is just say, yeah, that's not very funny. Moving right
Mhm.
along. Done. Right? Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me for a podcast. I love your story. I'm so glad that you decided to share it with me. I'm sure we're going to have lots of positive feedback from this podcast. You're amazing. You're a great mentor yourself, and thanks for putting yourself out there to be a good mentor and an instructor. I think it's really a big deal to be a female instructor. And I love everything that you're doing. And I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be creeping you. I'm going to be watching you. You have to stay in touch with me and let me know what you're doing and where you're going and what you're up to and stuff like that. We both live in the same city. So maybe, you know, when I mean, COVID right now, I know this podcast is going to be shared hopefully for years to come, but COVID officially, I think they're opening everything up as of tomorrow.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
so I think the no mask thing starts tomorrow for most establishments anyways. So maybe in a week or so we can get together, maybe, I don't know, meet in Calgary somewhere for a beer if you drink, or tea if you don't. And I give gifts to anybody that does a podcast with me. So I'll give it to you in person.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jill.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about that. So I'll stop recording now. Thank you so much for joining me. That was great. Yeah, thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a good time chatting with you, and you are an inspiration. It's women like you who are really helping to pave the path on a larger platform. And yes, we're both instructors, but by seeing another female in a similar position, it's like, yes, go for it. And it brings me up as well to see you flourish in this industry. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's what we need to be. You and I are both trailblazers, and we need to bring each other up and even more women up, right?